because I get to watch her do something that we call memory reconsolidation, where she's taking these old things that she learned about herself when she was really young, and she gets to start questioning them. Like, I remember when she said, "You want to touch me?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to touch you." And she's like, "Really? Like, I'm not dirty?" Like, these things that get trapped in your thoughts when you're really young, we get to poke at them just enough that you can start to question them.
Welcome to the Open Bedroom Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Kalo. Welcome to conversations about open relationships, online dating, and creating relationship dynamics that truly align for you. Welcome back to the Open Bedroom Podcast. Today, I have Michelle Renee on, and we are talking about the evolution of surrogate partner therapy. I know you're like, what is that? We're going to explain. Don't worry. Michelle is based in San Diego and specializes in platonic intimacy as both a surrogate partner and a professional cuddler, which we're going to talk more about. Often working alongside their talk therapists, Michelle becomes the soft place to land for her clients while they learn to build a healthy relationship with themselves and others. Michelle, is there anything else that you want to add to this before we jump in?
I'm also the founder of Soft Cock Week. I also do a
Yes.
lot of community building inside the intimacy world. So I like to connect therapists and touch professionals. There's a lot of stuff. I can't touch my whole bio. There's too much there, but people could go find it if they find something today that piques their curiosity.
Perfect. I am going to come back to Soft Cock Week because I think it's happening this month. So people
Mhm.
might be curious about that. First, I want to talk about professional cuddling. So, this seems to be new on the scene. I have done episodes on women that work professionally as escorts in brothels, whatever you want to call them. We've had really cool people on from OnlyFans. And what I'm hearing this repetitive theme of we aren't getting enough touch and we want more connection. And so I'm curious, what is a professional cuddler?
Yeah, so I speak specifically about Cuddlist.com. It's a brand. We do training over there. I happen to be the director of training, so in full disclosure, like I'm a little biased, right?
Okay, good.
So at Cuddlist, which has its own very specific method, we train people to do professional cuddling from our space, which means that it has to fall under our code of conduct, which says things like you have to be at least 18, we have to keep our clothes on, we're not going to chase arousal. There's hygiene issues to consider, all these kinds of the rules, right? Um, so it has to follow code of conduct. It has to be client led, meaning you have to, as a client, come in and the practitioner can help you, but we want you to figure out what you want. And sometimes you come in already knowing what you want, and sometimes you have to have a little bit of coaching because a lot of us have been trained not to know what we want, or it's easier not to know what we want. And so we help our clients learn how to articulate what they'd like. And then we also have an agreement that says I'll never do anything that I'm not wholeheartedly a yes to. That if ever I'm uncomfortable physically or emotionally, I'll do something to change it. I'll never sit and tolerate with the client. And the client, we ask them if they can promise us the same thing. So we're never in caretaker mode. So that means I never have to say yes to anything as a practitioner. The client always has to make the request. So they never have that moment. And this is why I love it. I think it's really trauma informed. There's never going to be a moment a client says, Michelle asked me if I'd like to do this and I didn't know how to tell her no, so I did it anyways. Right? That's a really big question that comes up sometimes as a practitioner is like, how do I stay like out of the weeds with a client? We don't know what's going to show up in our space. And I think if you follow those three components of a cuddle session, you'll be in pretty good shape.
Okay, I have so many questions. The
Yes,
first
start.
one is how do people find you? So I'm a person that's like, I need more touch in my life. I feel isolated, or I just want somebody to hug on me. How do people find a professional cuddler?
Right. So I love Cuddlist.com. It's a really reputable business. I've been with them since 2015 when they first launched. We're pretty much not solely, but pretty close to being all owned by practitioners. And so it's just a really reputable organization. I also love Cuddle Sanctuary out of Los Angeles, though they have nationwide coverage. Some of the other sites I can't speak for. I say it's a bit of the wild, wild west because there's no training that you have to do to be a professional cuddler. Anybody can just kind of hang their sign up and call themselves a pro, which is great. And also I question if those people understand things like who is the service for, right? I remember back in the day when I first started with Cuddlist, I was their operations manager for a little while. And we used to interview people that wanted to become cuddlers.
Mhm.
And one of the things we would look for is, are they trying to get their needs met through their work? Right? When you hear somebody say, "Oh, I could use more touch in my life. I should become a cuddler." That's problematic, right? Like it's just not going to set you up for really great boundaries.
So, what is an ideal cuddlist then?
I think that I think you have to have a passion for helping people. I think that this work doesn't work if you think of it as like better than driving Uber. Like a lot of people, I think come into the work because they see it as you make how much money an hour, right? They focus on the money. And the truth of the matter is that I'm really good at what I do. I've taken a lot of trainings. I know how to provide a professional service, which is very different than cuddling with your friends, where we're not sure who it's for. Is there confidentiality in the space? If I talk about something, is it going to bother them or go back to somebody? Are they too close to what's going on in my life? Do I feel safe crying with them? There's all these components, right? And I think paying for a professional is like paying for a professional haircut. It's different than if I just had my husband trim the curls up. I don't think it would look this good. I pay a lot of money for this hair, right? I think that what was the original question?
Oh, what makes an ideal cuddlist? Like
Oh,
if they're
yes.
not
So
looking to get their needs met, what exactly
not
makes
looking to
them
get
want to
their
do
needs
this?
met. They're not squigged out by the idea of holding strangers. I mean, that's the first thing that comes out of people's mouths so often is, I could never do that. And I'm like, that's why you don't. Where for me, I think getting to know someone in cuddle space is my favorite way to get to know them because to me, touch is another language, right? And there's a trust that builds really quickly in that space because of the touch component. And I love that. Like that is, I love meeting new clients and getting to know them this way. That's got to kind of be in your heart. This is a
Mm.
really heart-centered job. And I think if you know what I mean? If you hear the idea of cuddling people and you're like, ugh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you've already taken yourself out of the running. If you hear I'm gonna cuddle people, if you're not met with curiosity or just instant, oh my gosh, I would love this, I would be so good at this. I
Mm.
hear that I give good hugs, like these kinds of things. I think it's an industry to look into. I personally think that back when it started in 2015, what I saw in myself was, wow, here is a way for me to get paid for my emotional labor,
Mm.
right? Like I've been giving this stuff away forever. And I'm sure, sex workers you've talked to have probably had some of the same realizations that some of this I should get paid for, right? And the fact that I can turn it into a career. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had an accounting background when I got divorced. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, kind of thing. I found Betty Dodson and knew I wanted to do hands-on sex education.
Mhm.
Is cuddling hands-on sex education? I didn't think it was. But guess what? It totally is about building good relationship skills. And those translate to good quality sexual relationships, right? If you can learn how to identify what you want, articulate it, hold your boundaries, be in your pleasure, right? To really be able to receive pleasure, not in a sexual way in my space, but that translates over to the bedroom for sure.
Well, now I'm curious, like, what does a cuddle session look like?
Yeah, so you'll see if you're watching this on video, I'm in my office right now. A client will come in, every session looks different, but they all start the same. So they come in, I ask them to pick a spot where they feel most comfortable sitting, and I ask them to tell me where they'd like me to sit also. That puts them in their choice right away, which is really empowering for the client. and they can kind of have a sense of control of this new space. I set my space up specifically to be trauma informed. So like you never have to sit with your back to the door, things like that, right? So they pick their spot. I sit where they ask me to sit. And then we do our opening agreement, right? That I just mentioned about, this is a session for you. I promise you I'll take care of myself, that agreement that we talked about earlier. And then I say, how do you want to connect? It's not about touch. It can be. There's access to touch. But what I want them to figure out is, what do they actually want right now? And if they're new, it might look like, can we just sit here and talk to each other a little bit? Maybe we're sitting close enough to where our legs are touching each other. Or I've had clients that started on opposite corners of the bed from me, and we eye gazed for a while. Like, we're talking many sessions where we would just keep shortening our distance between us because they weren't comfortable. They weren't ready to jump into a full body embrace. And then there's other people that come in and they're like, oh my gosh, can we just like lay down and hug each other for 90 minutes? And I'm like, I'm a yes to that. Right. And then we're all smushed together. So it's a wide range.
Yeah, I'm sitting here like, what would I ask? And it would probably be something like, yeah, can you like mama spoon me and like play with my hair and maybe like rub my back? That would
Yeah.
feel
And then
really
I would
good.
probably ask you more questions about, what does that look like exactly? What kind of play, what does it mean to play with your hair? How would you like me to touch? Is it running my fingers through it? We would get really detailed and be
Wow.
able to really break it down so that it is, what would make that even better for you? I want you to have exactly what you want, as long as I'm a yes to it. Because if I'm not a yes to it wholeheartedly, you're not going to feel the connection between us. And that's going to kind of not give you the experience that you're coming for.
I feel like this just opened so many more questions for me. Okay. One is on your end. How do you know that you're like a hell yes to the people that come through your door? Like, in other words, I am imagining me holding another person and I'm just like, I'm
Mm.
like, I can't connect with this person, or it feels like they have a lot of walls, or like they smell funky, like I can smell cigarettes on them or something. Like, are these things that you just kind of have to push through, or is it kind of like dating where first there's like, is there some kind of zing where we want to
Yeah.
hold each other for 90 minutes?
Well, remember the opening agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Promise you that I'll never put myself in discomfort. So I'm gonna think about that way before the client shows up at my door. Right?
Okay.
They put in a request on cuddlist.com and I get a notification and I send them back an email. My email is pretty direct. I've been doing this for a long time. I know how to kind of weed out the ones that aren't looking for what I'm offering. So one of the questions a lot of times we use in our vetting process is, are you seeking platonic services or are you settling for platonic services?
Mm-hmm.
Because it feels different. Feels very different. So my email is really kind of harsh, and I kind of say that like, I'm sorry if this sounds harsh, but I have a very bulleted, like, I'm a yes to this, I'm a no to this, I'm a yes to this, I'm a no to this, right? So it's very, very clear that I'm not interested in having any kind of sexual energy exchange with the client. It's one thing about our work is our bodies are in relaxation mode. Erections are really natural. So a lot of times with clients, I bring that right up in a call. We do like a screening call together, jump on Zoom, get to know each other for a little bit. And one of the things I offer up a lot of times is just like take that worry, because I think a lot of people that have penises are very concerned about erections.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just part of how Viagra works, is to relax our blood vessels, right? And so if you're relaxed in a session with me and you do get an erection, it's okay. We don't chase it. We don't try to build arousal, but I'm comfortable with it. It doesn't bother me. Other clinicians or other practitioners might ask that you shift positions or something. I will ask my client, if you're comfortable, I'm comfortable. We don't have to change anything. But if you would feel more comfortable, let's do something different. Right? It's really normalized in this space. So we talk about that before we make plans to meet. I never have to say yes to any client. Right? So I have to say this, with my very harsh email and the fact that I charge a $40 fee to jump on that Zoom call that gets applied to their first session. So they really don't, and I'll refund it if I'm not interested in working with them or they decide they don't want to work with me. They have nothing to lose in that, but it does put a little skin in the game. So I also know that I don't do well with people that no show. And if somebody schedules a Zoom with me, I at least know that I have a no show fee if for some reason they don't respect my time,
Mhm.
right? But by the time they get to that Zoom call, I don't, the only client I can think of that I was a no to was because he just simply wasn't in the area. He was really up north in California. We used the time to do a little bit of resource gathering for him because I am a resource maven. I connected to all sorts of resources and I helped him figure out what he needed and we did a refund and we called it good. But usually by the time they get there, they already have kind of checked enough boxes.
Awesome. Okay. I think this might be my last Cuddlist question. We'll
Okay.
see. Because you keep opening amazing doors that I want to walk through. But one of them would be, I guess this question is around the person that hires you to cuddle them. I would imagine that most of us have a hard time fully being seen as well as being touched,
Hmm.
even if it's just platonically. Like I've
Hmm.
been in women's circles where we've had to stare at each other and hold space for each other. And like, it's hard. It's so hard to
Hmm.
be seen by another person. And so I'm curious if for most of your sessions, are people maybe more advanced where they've done a lot of work and they're like, I can easily identify that I need to be cuddled in a very particular manner and I can tell you exactly how and where to sit? Or do you find that people come in and they're just like, I just need to be held? Or is it
They
something
don't,
else?
I would say they come in knowing that there's something missing,
Hmm.
like touch is missing from their lives or they're scared of it and they want to like approach it.
Hmm.
Um, most people don't walk in going, I know exactly what I want. I want this, this, and this. And I love that about it. It's more of a mystery to me. And I happen to be a coach at heart, right? So I'm like, people have body image issues and just like you said, having somebody touch their body is a big step for them. And I'm aware of all of that. And so I'd say most people, at least when they come to me because of my specialties, I think they are less likely to know what they want and they're looking for someone that can help them figure that out.
Okay. Do you have any stories that you might want to share that you are allowed to share that might just be interesting examples for us listeners that have never experienced this?
I have so many stories. God, I mean, from like I mentioned, a person that sat up opposite corners to do eye gazing with me, he never wanted touch as part of our work, but he was working through trauma with a trauma therapist and he wanted a place to practice eye gazing. We eventually got close enough to where we could have body contact, but it looked like we would stand and rock together like we were middle school dance partners. And I would put my hands on his shoulders right here. And I could feel these muscles pop like popcorn because he was releasing trauma from his body.
Mm.
It was wild. He taught me so much about trauma work. Um, Clients that want a place to cry and think that's going to be a hard thing to accomplish, and sometimes it is, and I can't guarantee tears. But it was one of my favorite sessions because we read like love song lyrics together and we slow danced together and tears came multiple times during that session. It was just one of my favorite ever sessions. Um, I have these moments that happen all the time. And then like I have my surrogate partner work, which I bring a lot of cuddling into that. So then I'm like trying to think in my head, is that a cuddle client or is that a surrogate partner client? Because I do a lot of work that looks very overlapping. So maybe we should talk about what is surrogate partner
This was a
therapy.
perfect segue because I was just
Okay.
about to ask. So let's
Because
talk
I
about
want to tell a
surrogate partner
story.
therapy. Okay,
Yeah, I
go
want
for
to
it.
tell a story. So surrogate partner therapy started with Masters and Johnson back in the 70s. And the traditional form of surrogate partner therapy was often called sex surrogacy because they were bringing in, traditionally, they were bringing couples to work in St. Louis for, I think, a week where they learn sensate focus exercises to help with erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation. So the husband and wife, very, mononormative, heterosexual, comes in and they do the work. Well, then the single men were like, what about us? We have erectile issues and premature ejaculation issues. So they brought them in and they got them a sex worker, which they called a sex surrogate at the time, that would come in and be their partner to learn these exercises. And that's how my industry that I'm in started, but it's evolved so much since then. So some of your listeners might be familiar with The Sessions, which is a movie by Helen Hunt back in, I think, 2012, where she tells the story of Cheryl Cohen Green, who is a surrogate partner. And of course, it's Hollywood. It's not exactly accurate. They rush through it. They only have 6 sessions to get everything done. And it's a really lovely story about a man that lives in like an iron lung and he wants to have a sexual experience and blah, blah, blah. Watch the movie. It's touching. It's lovely. It's not realistic, but that's how Hollywood works. The way surrogate partner therapy looks now is very much about building relational skills. So the clients are single, they're in talk therapy, they've kind of stalled out. Therapist doesn't really know what to do next to kind of give them that little nudge, or they're hesitant to date because of something is happening that's keeping them out of the dating pool, or they would start to work some of this stuff out. So a lot of times it's sexual dysfunction, it's late in life sexual debut, it's maybe understanding their gender and their sexuality as those things have shifted over the years. It can be recovery from trauma, sexual assault. There's a wide range of reasons that you would bring in a surrogate partner. I think of it as a practice person to figure out what's happening to you while you're in relationship with another. So it's like getting to know yourself in a really different way than you might in just using talk therapy by itself. Because then I work with a therapist and send them all the cool, yummy things that are happening in our sessions. And all three, me, the therapist, and the client are in conversation with each other so that we can work together as a team, collaborative team. So that traditionally has offered the option for erotic contact anywhere up through PIV intercourse, or depending on orientations, what have you. I did that work for a while, and but I started in cuddling first. And what I found is that I want to show up for my clients in a way that's a little bit deeper emotionally, and I can't switch the hats for the erotic work very well. It doesn't feel great to me to do that, and I'm working really hard on not self-abandoning. So I decided this year I was going to take the erotic component out of my work, which is now what I call Platonic surrogate partner therapy. So it looks a lot like cuddle therapy, except I require a therapist be involved because we're going to go into a lot deeper work, right? In the cuddlist world, it's unconditional positive regard. You're coming in, I'm holding space for you, but I'm not there to really be quite the mirror for you as I am in surrogate partner therapy. So in surrogate partner therapy, it might look like we're cuddling and there's something that's happening between us that I'm going to call out, right? There's something like, oh, you pulled away from me. What's that? What's going on? Is this your disorganized attachment showing up? And then I'm going back to the therapist and I'm saying, hey, there was this moment where the client pulled away from me. You guys should talk about this. Like, we get to have kind of if your doctor was to send you to the physical therapist, I'm like the physical therapist for your talk therapist, because your talk therapist can't be in that kind of relationship with you. So it's deeper work.
Okay. I'm trying to imagine this. So instead of like cuddling on a sofa or the bed and having these experiences, are you out in the wild? Are you like going on dates? How does this work?
Not usually.
Yeah.
Most of the work looks exactly like somebody showed up for cuddling with me. At least this is, I'm speaking only from my own experience here, because I kind of do things a little bit different because of my background. It looks a lot like a cuddle. It's really like a cuddle session in my world. It's just that I'm willing to push at you a little bit. We joke about, maybe it's not a joke, but pillow versus mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a pillow where you're really soft and cuddly and I'm just going to do everything in my power for you to feel great and loved and cared for? Or am I willing to push back against you a little bit and kind of question some of the things that I'm noticing
Mm.
and be more of a mirror? I take the stance of the pillow until there's enough safety between us that I feel safe enough to push back a little bit and be more of a mirror and say, this is what I'm noticing.
Okay. So in these sessions, they're talking to you, they're sharing, and
A
that's
lot
where
of
you're
times,
getting the information to go, I'm
it,
noticing this reoccurring theme.
not always, it really just depends. Let me give you a more concrete example. I have a
Okay.
client that is really, really okay with me talking about her work and my work together, so much that she's been on my podcast. Like we have stuff out there. She's not shy about it at all. She has a really tragic history with childhood sexual assault, really tragic. And she started her healing journey with a really wonderful talk therapist. And she got into seeing a professional cuddler through Cuddlist back in like a few years ago. And she was coming out. She lives on the East Coast. She was coming out here to San Diego to visit. And she's like, I've been following Michelle on social media. I should book a cuddle session with her. This would be great. And so she came in for a cuddle session and we worked really well together. It was just a cuddle session, but things that came out from that was she noticed that she felt safety in her body, not because of me, but because of the work she'd been doing. She was able to show up with a new person and she felt safe enough that she could have her back to the door, which for her was huge. She also that night noticed that she was able to sleep flat on her back. She has never slept not in some kind of upright position so she can feel like she can survey the room, right? This is at that time 63-year-old woman. Okay. I'm like, this is amazing. This is great. Love this. Never had contact with her therapist at this point. We do another cuddle session when I was back on the East Coast. And after that session, she came to me and asked me if I would consider working with her as a surrogate. So not carry her baby, not not a gestational surrogate, but a surrogate partner. And in our work, what I like to say is I am a surrogate, securely attached practice partner, right? We've built this security between us that we get to try things together. And what our work looks like is a lot of taking these memories that she's processing with her talk therapist. A lot of it is in EMDR. And she comes into space with me and we figure out how we can take that thing that's really a sticking point for her and her memories and give it what she calls a new co-host. So she calls me her new co-host. And one of those examples would be a lot of her abuse happened in the bathroom. So she has a real fear of showering. She has a real fear of walking into the bathroom. And so one of the things we did was we walked in and out of the bathroom together until that feeling subsided a bit. And then we stood in the shower together. We didn't even run the water. We stood in the shower together and just let that, again, titrate that relaxing of the nervous system. I'm safe right now. Michelle's with me. Everything's okay. After that session, she was able to, she would sponge bathe. Like she really was afraid of the shower. After the session, she was able to shower. It took her a couple hours. She kept telling herself, it's okay. Michelle stood in here with me. It's okay. Like she uses me to resource,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we keep taking these events in her history and like I will practice laying my body on top of hers. So that compression, real scary for a lot of people with sexual abuse backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
But now when she thinks about that, it's easier for her to pull up my face as a difference, right? So that's what she says, new co-host. One of the cool things, so talk about the connection between cuddling and how I work as a surrogate partner. She's in town no, it's November now. Early October, she was here. And when she comes into town, we do multiple sessions. So on our last session of the week, earlier in the week, she had met my husband. And she's like, he is so warm and kind. And I felt so like they shared a hug and she goes, he felt warm. I've never felt a man feel warm before, which is like, I think a lot of that is like a numbing of our system, right? And so she had heard me talk about him the whole time that we'd been working together. So she was really curious to meet him and she got to meet him and she felt really good with him. And before our last session, I said, what would it feel like for you if we invited him in for 30 minutes of our 2-hour session? And you guys could have a little mini cuddle, just as like a little titrated event where you get to be in physical proximity with a male-bodied person. And that she's never had, this is a woman that's never had consensual sex, right? And she's not going to have sex with my partner, but she's also just never been in that kind of intimacy, physical closeness with anybody consensually. And so she was excited. I think we talk about her inner child a lot, and her inner child, her young part was so excited to get to have that space with my husband. And so I stayed in the room. We negotiated. We started it just like I would start every session. Talked about speaking up if you're uncomfortable. That goes for even my partner, right? He's just another participant in the space. And they got to titrate the work that her and I have been titrating, which is her being the little spoon and all the trauma that that's been bringing up in her memories lately. And I just walked him through the exact same way I was doing it with her. I had him lay behind her with some space between them. I said, can you put your hand on her shoulder? Okay, client, how does that feel? Feels pretty good. All right, great. Can we try your hip? Yeah, let's try the hip. So I had him put his hand on her hip. How does that feel? It feels good. Okay. You feel safe? Yep, I feel safe. All right. How about what if he tries putting his hand on your belly? Yep, let's try that. Okay, belly. All right, that feels okay. All right, are you ready for him to move his body closer? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, so I say, Paul, move your body closer. He moves his body closer. Okay, how are you doing? I'm doing pretty okay. Okay, great. Is there anything you want? And she's like, could you pet my cheek with your hand, which is again something her and I had done in the session before. So he pets her cheek. And then I said, could you put your hand up on her head like this? Because it's something that I had done that had brought up a memory for her. And what she had said to me was, it's like you're protecting me from my dad hitting me right now. Because that was how vivid the memories were for her in that moment. And what we noticed is that she started to dissociate at that space. But she caught it and she said, well, I just noticed that I was starting to dissociate. Okay, we're just going to back away, right? We don't have to like end everything, but we're going to give you a little bit of space, right? But she shared with him that like she shared the same story with him that she shared with me about her dad hitting her. And they both cried together. Like such a healing moment in a quick 30 minutes for her. And of course that all got reported back to the therapist. Therapist trusts me. Like it's a good collaboration. And I felt really good because they were never left alone together. I didn't have to worry, right? And I came home and I said, so do you want to do this? Shall I send you to Cuddlist training? And he said, no, I'm happy to be your tool. Like I'm happy to show up in a space with you, but I'm not, he saw how much there was in that space to know and to hold. And I say it's incredible, like improv work. It's always watching to see what's happening. How do I adjust to this? A lot of attunement. And it's freaking cool, right? Because I get to watch her do something that we call memory reconsolidation, where she's taking these old things that she learned about herself when she was really young, and she gets to start questioning them. Like I remember when she said, you want to touch me? And I said, yeah, I want to touch you. And she's like, really? Like I'm not dirty? Like these things that get trapped in your thoughts when you're really young, we get to poke at them just enough that you can start to question them.
That is so beautiful. And thank you for telling that story because I don't know that we would have gotten where you just took us without having it. So thank you to your client as
Yeah.
well for allowing us a little peek in of what this
Yeah.
is. And sounds magical. Like I've never heard of this before. I'm thinking of like not only talk therapy that I've done, but that friends of mine have done and how helpful something like this would be.
It's like it's a form of exposure therapy. It really is,
Mhm.
with a big relational component. And even my colleagues that do a more traditional form of it, it's the same kind of thing. It's just they can take it in different directions than I'm willing to do. And I find that because of that tighter container, that I not having the erotic component, I can do that deeper work, and it feels um how do I explain this? A lot of times I come in with a lot of mom energy. There's a lot of reparenting that's happening in that space. I'm super nurturer person. And to have that have a potential erotic component is just it's really complicated, and this keeps it a lot cleaner for me and the client.
I bet.
Yeah.
Mom energy is great. I feel like we all need to have some positive mom energy in our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I want to move us into our third and final little bucket, which is
Okay. Oh,
softcockweek.com.
yes.
What is this about?
Yeah, so back when I was doing the sex part of my surrogate partner work,
Yeah.
I got a lot of people that have penises contacting me saying, um, I don't stay hard all the time during sex. Like sometimes my erection wanes and comes back and goes down and whatever. Can you fix it? And I was like, that's just natural. Like you're watching edited porn, right? By the way, porn bloopers do exist, and I highly recommend people go out and find them. But that's just a bonus note. So I made a couple jokes on a couple of podcasts about how I should start a soft cock appreciation week, because I like soft penises. I think they're fantastic. They're so approachable. They're soft. I find them cuter than an erect penis. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but I like them. And so I had the energy for it. And so I mentioned a couple of things, and I had a couple of friends go, so do it, Michelle. And I happen to be one of those people that has an idea like in the shower, and I'll have the website up by the end of the afternoon kind of person. And so in 2022, um, I think it was in the end of August, I launched softcockweek.com, the website, and plotted for our first week of appreciation to be in November of 2022. And we picked November because it was Men's Mental Health Awareness Month or something. Movember was raising money, and so that's why it started. We are on year 3 now.
Wow.
Um, I passed off the hostess duties to my colleague and friend Erica Leroy, who is a sexological body worker who does a lot of work with men and erectile issues as a masturbation coach. It's totally her jam. She has so much passion for it. And she lost a partner to undiagnosed diabetes that could have been caught through erectile issues and also ejaculation issues. And so I met her on one of my community calls that I run called the Intimacy Professionals. We had an instant like, oh my gosh, you're like the sciencey side of me. Like I'm the big heart person and she's the big brain person. And she helped me last year, just kind of on the backside of it, just encouraging me, being kind of an accountability buddy. And after the week ended, I said, "Would you like to co-parent with me?" Because I don't have the passion. It was hard to get through year 2. I like to start things. I'm not a finisher,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm the start a new hobby and it sits on the table. I'm that person. And so she decided to be a yes, and she has got amazing things happening, and it's actually happening this week. So by the time this comes out, you probably will have missed it, but that's okay because all the recorded content lives at softcockweek.com and it's there year round. The only thing you'll miss is some of our live events that don't get recorded, but um, it's a really great week, and it's really lovely to hold space for a lot of grief, but also like make it normal to talk about.
Mhm.
The I was just on one of our calls every day this week. Erica is hosting something called a soft place to land, which is like an office hour situation. So those won't be recorded, but I popped on just to see what was happening. And there was a room of, gosh, probably 10, at least 10 to 15 people that were able to ask questions and just have regular normal conversations around their frustrations and how they didn't, like, a lot of talk around prostate cancer, and they didn't know all the side effects. And there's just a lot of less celebration than maybe Michelle wants to show up for, because I came in that first year real excited to talk about soft penises. And I quickly got the memo that, Michelle, you need to tone it down. You're a little too excited for the grief-stricken people. Not everybody is where I'm at. And in this space, there was a little bit of both. And then to end the week, which I don't know if this will be recorded, I think it will be, they're doing an open mic night for soft cock erotica.
Ooh.
So maybe that will live there, because what we've found is like there's not a lot of representation around the flaccid phallus in the porn industry. And we want to change that. We want to have everybody be able to see themselves.
I love it. Thank you. Okay, so I will post that in our show notes so you guys can go check it out. Michelle, if people want to work with you, either for cuddling or the partner surrogacy therapy, how does that work? Especially if you don't live in their state, what are the options?
Yeah. Well, first go to humanconnectionlab.com and you can poke around there and see all sorts of different stuff. I work primarily out of San Diego, but it's a beautiful city if you want to come visit. I do these mini intensives where people come see me like quarterly, or I go see them. It doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. If you just want to come have a session with me while you're in town, hit me up. Do it ahead of time. Don't wait until the week that you're here, because it is a slower moving process. I am not ordered like pizza. It is not 30 minutes or less. I will not be delivered. But a lot of times people will be like, hey, Michelle, I'm coming into town. Can we talk about maybe working together and what that might look like? I'm also up in the LA and Orange County area once a month, and I'm out in Baltimore quarterly also seeing clients. So it isn't that you have to fly me to you per se, but if we can meet somewhere, and I'm not opposed to doing travel work, but it is cost prohibitive a lot of times. So the fun, interesting thing that I've started this year when we talk about cost is I started an experiment in May around an anti-oppression rate system. So all of my clients pick their own rate after they they take a little quiz themselves around privileges. And a lot of people can slide down in rate, but a lot of people slide up in rate, which means they pay me more than my standard rate so that it makes the work more accessible to everyone else. And it warms my heart. I was worried when I first launched it that I would be taken advantage of. And it's not been the case at all. And it's just so affirming of the kinds of people that I get to work with.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I will make sure and put your link in the show notes below. How very cool. And that's pretty brave, I feel like, to have like a sliding scale and a pay more if you feel like it. And that's amazing. Thank you so much for showing up today, educating us on some new stuff. And I'm excited that you were. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Open Bedroom Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and give us a like and click subscribe below and stay up to date on all the new episodes that we release. If you have a topic that you'd really like more information on, leave us a comment below and we'll see what we can do. Feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and especially your partners. This is a great way to open up some amazing conversations. We'll see you next week.